Hi, I'm Glenda Adkisson with the American Red Cross. I'm the Executive Director of the Paducah Area Chapter. And I thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about the Local Heroes Campaign and some of the reasons why we are involved in this Heroes Campaign. And today I'm very happy to have with me our guest, Cindy Walker. Cindy is a co-chair for this year's Heroes Campaign along with Glenn Anderson with Paducah Water. And Cindy has been one of our disaster volunteers and disaster action team for some time now, and she is a new member of our board of directors. And Cindy, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And I know this is your first time to be involved with the Heroes Campaign, and this is a fundraiser for the chapter. I think probably with many things that go on throughout the year, people are realizing just how busy and how involved the Red Cross is. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the needs for the heroes and the campaign, as well as the support locally. And are you pretty excited about going into this Heroes Campaign?
I am. I think our timing is about perfect on this. I think with the ice storm, that people have realized what the Red Cross actually does do. I think they know a lot about blood services, but I don't think they realize that we have a disaster action team and that we're responsible for sheltering and feeding when we have a event.
Right. And you mentioned blood services, and that is part of the American Red Cross. Blood services provides about 40% of all of the nation's blood supply. And that's very important. And because it is very specific, it's biomedical. As you know, Cindy, they do operate in a different location here in Paducah, and they operate separately. And then the chapter does everything else except blood. And today we're going to be talking about the areas of service. And of course, that first area that I'll touch on is the armed services, services to our armed forces. And many people probably don't even know that this is what we do. We are trying to talk about this and help the community become informed and aware of what we do as far as our services to armed forces. But were you aware of the services to the armed forces before you got involved with the Red Cross?
I was not. Even though I have a son-in-law in Afghanistan, I just didn't really connect the local office doing, the Red Cross office being the liaison between them. I just didn't realize that.
And you're just like so many people, and that is one reason why we have a program called Get to Know Us Before You Need Us. But services to armed forces is something that is actually a congressional mandate. It's something that was set up before any of us were born. Actually, it's been in place for many, many years, and that is it's a situation where if a person has a member of their family actively involved in the military, and they have some type of family crisis, emergency, and they need to make that communication and get arrangements made for leave for that person that's in the military, those messages must be processed by the American Red Cross. It has to go through. We actually go in, we verify the situation, and then we make that communication. Now, we do not approve or disapprove a person's leave, but we simply facilitate the communication. That's a big part of what we do as far as our military. We try to do some fun things too. And I know this year you are involved very heavily with Red Cross, and I think, were you involved last year whenever we had the Cookies for the Troops? I think you were pretty new at that time. But the Cookies for Our Troops was a fun project that we partnered with the Girl Scouts, and we'll be doing that again this year. We encourage people from the community to purchase a box of cookies that they want to be shipped to our active military, perhaps those people in Afghanistan or in Iraq. And last year we allowed the girls that were in the troops to actually put together letters, and some of them drew pictures, and we included those in the cookies, the boxes of cookies. And we sent in a box, we would send about usually 8 to 10 boxes inside of one large box that went to the troops, and they would have the letters from the Girl Scouts in that. Health and safety is another area, and I know that you have been involved in some of those things. Would you want to speak about some of the health and safety CPR first aid type courses?
I think that everybody that can possibly do this, they need to come and take the CPR and first aid. It's just general everyday things that you need to know, and it can really help save a life.
Well, and Cindy, we do have CPR and first aid just for the community. We also, of course, have many other things. We have the aquatics programs, lifeguard training, babysitter training. Within the babysitter training, we have younger girls that come in, and not just girls. Sometimes we have boys too. It just tends to be, I guess, a little heavier on the girl side, but certainly anyone is welcome to take that babysitter training. One thing that we're discussing is maybe having parties where for a birthday party people can come and all the girls get together and just make it a fun event where they learn how to take care of kids. And now, as a business owner, I know that you realize too that people in business often are required by OSHA requirements to have CPR and first aid training for some of their people. And is that something that in your business or businesses that you work with?
Oh, most definitely. I own Paducah Nurses Registry, and we obviously have certified personnel in the homes, hospitals, assisted living facilities, and these girls have to know their first aid and CPR. It's just a requirement. For me, it makes me feel that if a situation arises, they're able to handle it. They know to call 911, of course, first, but they're there to assist too. So I think it's very important that each business has at least one safety person that can, know that kind of information, because it's going to happen.
Right. And, for example, something that many people in the community may not know is that the defibrillators are available, those AEDs are available through the American Red Cross. They can actually contact the Red Cross and purchase them through the Red Cross. One thing people may not realize is that these health and safety programs are the sole revenue generating resource or revenue resource for the American Red Cross. So it is top quality training, and what they're also doing is they're keeping those dollars in the community, because those dollars are then used to respond to emergencies and disasters within our community and help keep a viable Red Cross in place here in the community. And that's something that's important to realize too. The third area of our services is really disaster services, and I know, Cindy, this is your area. This is where you first came to be involved with the American Red Cross. And can you tell us a little bit about what caused you to make that phone call and to come to the Red Cross to get involved, and what your involvement has been?
Well, I've been working in home health care for at least 20 years, and I was looking for some way to give back to the community, because the community has been so wonderful to me. And my mother worked for the Red Cross many, many, many years ago, and I just decided that, I'm going to give that a try. And now I'm hooked and extremely passionate about it. It's just my favorite area. We have what we call a DAT team, and what's Disaster Action Team. And to be on that Disaster Action Team, Glenda, we have to have lots of training.
Right.
You just don't go in and say, okay, let's go, I'm ready to go to a fire.
Sure. And when we look at the community, the first thing that we do, of course, and we'll talk a little bit more about volunteer training in a minute. And of course, we could not do anything that we do without our volunteers. And we're so glad that we have you as part of our organization. But preparing not only volunteers, but the community is so important. And we are doing, of course, I know you've gotten involved in some of those things, but preparing in the community is kind of the area that we call our Be Red Cross Ready. And it basically is letting people know that you need to be ready to kind of take ownership of your own well-being as much as possible. Sure, we want people from the community, we want there to be a Red Cross there, we want firemen there, but ultimately, as a family, as an organization, as a business, we need to take some responsibility. And to do that, the Red Cross has been a real voice in that area. Every March is American Red Cross Month. Every September is Preparedness Month. And so in those months, we are doing a special program in the grocery stores where we're actually setting up some displays and letting people know, hey, these are things you need to be aware of. And I think after you have an ice storm or disaster that affects you in a way that you're just not expecting, you realize, wow, I really need to be thinking about what I might need if I'm on my own for a while. In a major disaster, you can't always get help immediately because all those responders have people in their families and there's so many needs out there that you can't just necessarily get them taken care of immediately. So within the grocery store, we are actually putting up shelf talkers, and shelf talkers are those little things, the cards that stick out from the grocery store aisles, and most of the time they represent, hey, buy one, get one half off. There's some kind of promotion, sale promotion. But what we are doing is putting up a shelf talker that is the Be Red Cross Ready, and it says, this is a preparedness item, and we're going to have that for water, for batteries, flashlights, weather radios, those things that people, as they're going through the grocery store, need to remember to pick up. And so we're going to be doing that. Community preparedness is a big thing that we do too. Not too long ago, there was a fire at the Jackson House. Unfortunately, it was fairly self-contained. I mean, it did not spread. But one thing we realized in that is that we wanted to really help communities, whether it's a small apartment community like the Jackson House or maybe the Irving Cobb or some of those other areas where they have people living in maybe I guess it's a high rise for Paducah. We want to help them get prepared. And I know, Cindy, that this is a project that you have been involved in. Our first one that we've done is at the Jackson House. And I know you brought with you today some things that we are using for the Jackson House. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're involved in at that site and kind of what we're doing there?
Well, this is a very, very exciting project. Preparedness is the most important thing that you can have. I mean, the first 72 hours of any type of disaster is just crucial. Dee Mentor and Jan Erkman, along with myself, we are preparing these lanyards with the resident's name and their apartment numbers, and then we've got a whistle. And the purpose of the whistle is you can blow this whistle longer than you can scream. So if they fall out of bed, fall off their chair, just need assistance, they can blow this whistle, and hopefully a hall monitor or a neighbor will get to hear them and come and help them. But this way, if we have to evacuate the Jackson House, we've got these little name tags that are going to be right by their doors or right by their bedstands, and it just helps us to keep a tally on who's where. Because a lot of time, and we're going to try to put it on a zip drive, all the information. That way, when we're partnering with the fire department on this, they're helping us tremendously. And that way, when they arrive on scene, we'll set up our little place, and then they'll have access to the information on how many people they're looking for and who goes to what room and who's in what room.
Well, and as you know, so much of disaster services is preparedness. And when you mentioned that about the zip drive, I thought about another area that we're working in, and that is our business continuity training. Right. This is something that last year we worked with our community, and it was interesting that not long after, well, no, actually it was after we had scheduled the first business continuity training in our area, but before it actually happened, the Sunday before we had the business continuity training, Hurricane Ike came through Paducah, and a hurricane is just not something that you think you're going to have to prepare for in Kentucky. But there were a number of homes that actually were hit and some of them destroyed during the Hurricane Ike, and that business continuity training really focused on a business. How, as a business, will you function tomorrow if you have no telephone, if you have no internet? Most of us feel like we don't know how, if you don't have internet and telephone, what do? You almost feel like you need to take a day off. But that has an economic impact on our community. So we need to have a backup plan in place, whether it's putting our information, our contacts on a flash drive, and having a laptop that if you don't have internet access, if you don't have a phone communication, what are you going to do? So business continuity training is a big part of that. Preparing our volunteers is a big part of what we do. As you mentioned a while ago, we have a lot of classes that volunteers must take. And I know, Cindy, that you have taken not only the basic classes, but you have actually taken more of the advanced classes, and you were involved in the shelter simulation that we had here, and were actually deployed. Can you speak to kind of how you feel like that shelter simulation helped the volunteers? And then, of course, looking at the ice storm that we recently had, I don't know that any of us realized just how important all of this was going to be. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on maybe how that training helped you as a volunteer, help prepare you?
The training was imperative. The shelter simulation was the best thing we could have done to prepare for what happened. We actually set up our shelter. We actually went through all the different stages from registering to feeding. So we all had a general idea in the back of our mind what we were supposed to do. And I've been deployed, 3 times now nationally, and there's several of us that do that. And so the reason a lot of us deploy nationally is where we can get that experience on someone else's disaster to bring home to our own community. That way, if it happens in our community, we know what to do. We know exactly what to start doing first. And I think that's really paid off for those of us who deployed nationally and have had all the extensive training. It really does make a difference to know what you're up against.
Right. And something I think that is important to think about. It's wonderful having spontaneous volunteers, and certainly during the 2009 ice storm, because it was such a widespread disaster and it lasted, I think, longer than any of us thought that it would. We really appreciated those spontaneous volunteers, the people from the community that were willing to come out and help us, even for an afternoon, and some of them were there for days. But as you know, when you have that many people that close together, you need to be very conscious of certain procedures that helps keep the spread of disease down. Helps if someone has a cold, if someone has the flu, you identify that. What do you do? And so that's why we are going to be working with churches and other organizations to help them prepare. If they want to say, hey, our church might want to be a shelter. The Red Cross can come in and do some training as a shelter partner with that church, with that organization, and we can help give them some training that's available through the Red Cross. And it is wonderful training because the Red Cross, that is what they do. That is their area. They've been doing it since the 1800s. One thing that I thought was very important, and that during the ice storm, the sheltering was so important in this community and in our area. A temporary power outage is not necessarily a disaster. It's an inconvenience. But when it's bitterly cold and people have nowhere to stay and they have no heat, they really need a place to go to get a hot meal and be warm. And I think that one thing that was interesting is that statewide, this was something that not only our community depended on the Red Cross for, but our state did. And our governor actually visited the shelter while we had it out at during the 2009 ice storm, the largest shelter that we had open, even though we had several open. The largest one was out at the National Guard Armory, and Governor Beshear visited the shelter during that period of time, and it just makes you realize how much they really depended on us. During the ice storm, we actually had a video made of some of the sheltering things that the services that we were offering during that time. And let's take a look at that now, Cindy, and see what we had to look at as far as that video.
Communities can try to be prepared for a catastrophe, but it's hard to be prepared when you haven't been through one in a while. So the Red Cross knows exactly what to tell you to do, what kind of support we need, and so that's why the Red Cross is so valuable. We're trying to do the best job we can do. Sometimes during a catastrophe it's overwhelming, and so we need somebody like the Red Cross to help us and to advise us, and they've done a great job in the last week.
The American Red Cross is very important because they can quickly bring in trained people that already have the knowledge of how to handle these situations. They already have the knowledge of placing people, getting professional people there to manage people, getting food resources, medical resources established quickly.
Well, after a severe ice storm, we have found that many people have been without power for a week, and of course they need somewhere warm to stay. So we are at the National Guard Armory and have around 200 people here. We expect more this afternoon coming in.
They has been 7. They provided us with, like, shelter, food, water, stuff, basic needs. Like they gave us like packets, shower gel and stuff, and then they provided us with hot water, which felt so good.
It has been very, very cold, and much of this population that is sheltered with us right now could be at high risk for even death, staying in their home for that long with no power, no heat, no way to cook, and we've been able to provide them meals. One little lady came up to me the other night, and her hands had been cracked and bleeding because it had been so cold. And something as simple as giving this lady a little jar of hand cream, and it just brought tears to her eyes, and she just thanked us. You would have thought I had given her gold.
The Red Cross come in, they got some sheltering set up, some warming centers, and they took really good care of the people that needed help.
Anytime you're doing anything of importance, it takes money. We've got to have money and resources to make that work. So I would hope that everybody would realize what a great job the Red Cross is doing and step forward and give money, give donations to the Red Cross so they can do the great job that they've done.
Whether it's a single family fire or something with the impact of this incredible storm, we're able to act right now. And of course, because of their continued support, then we'll be able to help at the next disaster. You know, Cindy, I think that video really illustrates the need for people in the community to volunteer through an established organization like the American Red Cross. And certainly it does take money to provide those meals. It takes money to provide the training, to purchase the cots, the blankets that we had available to people. It all takes money to do that. And the thing that I hope that we can get our community to understand is that the Red Cross is not some organization out there. It is us. It is people in our community. It is people that are willing to volunteer and be part of this disaster response effort, whether it is responding to a family whose home has burned and they need clothing, or they need sheltering, or it's during a massive ice storm and we need to set up shelters. And so in the Heroes campaign, we truly are asking people in our community to step up and be a hero for their community, because all of those dollars will go back into this community, and they literally can help provide food, clothing, and shelter for people in the community. Can you tell us just a little bit about the Heroes campaign and what's new as far as the online Heroes this year?
Glenda, as you know, our local Red Cross chapter is as strong as its community, and the community is what we have to rely on in order to have our Red Cross services. This year we have our Heroes campaign actually online. You can go to the PaducahRedCross.org and you can hit news and hit the little hero icon, and it will give you a chance to sign up. You can be a member of a team, you can be an actual hero, or you can just give $5. There's several different ways you can do it, but we are really excited about the online program because it reaches far, we can go into different counties. We're responsible for Ballard and Livingston County. That is part of our chapter. So this program will be going out to different people. You can even send an email to someone overseas and get a donation. It's an exciting program, and I've had very good success with it so far, so I'm excited.
Right, and of course, the sort of the way this program is set up is we are asking people or teams in the community to try to set a goal of $1,000 to help our community. $1,000 can do what in our community? Can you tell us what $1,000 could do for one family that's maybe lost their home to a fire?
Well, it's very important. If you'll know, when a person has a fire, not only do they lose their home, they lose their clothing, their food, and even if the house isn't totally destroyed, the water and the smell of the smoke, it's just overwhelming, and I can't imagine that kind of loss. I haven't ever had it, but we will give them groceries for a week. We will give them a new change of clothes, because obviously they come out with the clothes on their back. And then we will put them up, if they don't have family to stay with, we can provide temporary housing for them.
And that food, clothing, and housing, and actually $1,000 could provide food, clothing, a pair of shoes, and a coat, and groceries for a family of 4. So that is something that really has an impact in our community. And so I do hope that each of you will take advantage of this opportunity to be a hero yourself in this community through the American Red Cross Heroes campaign. Thank you again for joining us today, and we would ask for your involvement, whether it's a financial donation or donating your time to support your local American Red Cross. Thank you for being with us today.